Peace. This is Jamal Robinson with 720astrology.com. Today I'm going to talk to you about the upcoming new moon at 20 degrees of Scorpio in conjunction with Mars opposition to Uranus at 21 degrees of Taurus, which will Taurus and Scorpio, which will happen the day before the new moon. So, given that they're so close in proximity, let's talk about both of them. If you notice, I have this huge bump over my eye, along my eyebrow line, and I deduced that I was bit by a spider. Now, here's the significance of this. And, I'm one of these people who's guilty of always looking for synchronicities. I have a bookshelf in our bedroom. Well, we got a couple of bookshelves, but mine is over on my side of the room, next to my nightstand. And I've got one of those little spongy numerals for children, and it's the number 8. And the number 8 is a number numerologically of regeneration, because we have a midpoint where one cycle ends, and at that same midpoint, a new cycle begins. So that's why the number 8 is also the symbol for infinity. Well, the spider coincides with the number 8. There's a measure of infinity, or continuance of life, or transformation of states. It's like the snake shedding the skin. All those things tie in with the number 8. Well, I find it interesting that also the spider, which coincides with the number 8, is also associated with the sign of Scorpio, which is the sign of regeneration. So although I'm not happy about this spider loading up on me while I'm sleeping, and I saw the spider. This is the thing. Okay, that might sound crazy, but I feel like I can talk to some insects and bugs, especially bees. And so I saw the spider crawling behind my nightstand. Um, maybe I don't know, a day before I was bit. And I said to the spider, I'm gonna let you live, but don't bite me. Okay. And don't bite anybody else in the house. I don't think it listened. It bit me anyway. But but I find it interesting from a synchronistic standpoint that here we are in Scorpio season, and this spider shows up in my bedroom right around where I had the number 8, and takes a chunk out of my forehead. Um, and I see it as possibly something symbolic about that. But I digress. Getting into this conversation here, the new moon occurs at 20 degrees of Scorpio, as I said. And so the new moon is when the sun and the moon are at the same degree, relatively. And we know they're not actually on top of each other, but astrology is a symbolic language. So it would appear that they're on top of each other from our vantage point. They're occupying the same degree. So this is when the moon is dark, okay? And this is where we have metaphorically a phase of gestation beginning, okay? Now, typically the new moon is when we want to initiate or set intentions, okay? Now, as we delve into the whole idea of setting intentions around the new moon, I like to take into consideration things like the farmer's almanac and other resources that deal with when to plant seeds. Because if you think magically, then you can figure out how to use that and to tap into your own creativity and your sense of imagination, magi, and I magi nation. So nation is nativity, birth. I give birth to things based on what I can imagine or see or create. Um, so this new moon in Scorpio, I want to read something from this is a book from the this is actually this I don't know if the original edition was 19. This says the second edition was printed in 1920. So I don't know when the original came out. But this book title is Planting, Harvesting, and Surgical Operations, etc., according to the signs of the zodiac. There's the book. It's a little, I mean, it's a tiny little book. Okay. But I want to read something about Scorpio. It says, it is movable. The germs are active on the slightest opportunity and grow up with the greatest energy. Potatoes, beets, radishes, and all garden vegetables should be planted when the moon is in the signs of Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, and Taurus. For lettuce, beans, corn, wheat, rye, and barley, plant when the moon is in the signs of Cancer and Libra. For full pulp or foliage growth such as corn, fodder, alfalfa, millet, cabbage, celery, and peas, plant when the moon is in the sign of Libra or Capricorn. Listen to this. But it should be remembered that Cancer and Scorpio are good for everything. Good for everything. Two things I wanted to look at in this as we tie in symbology with this is that at first it says these vegetables, potatoes, beets, radishes. What do those three have in common? Potatoes, beets, radishes. It said it's good to plant those Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, and Taurus. Okay. Those vegetables I just listed are root vegetables. Okay. Scorpio is associated with the underworld. Okay. Now, which is where the roots form. And it says that this sign is one of the best ones to plant root vegetables. Okay. I thought that was significant from a symbolic perspective because let's apply that to our lives. In this season where in the northern hemisphere, the temperature is starting to decline, and because they play with the time and move it forward and back, the days are already getting shorter because we're in autumn, we're in fall. But to add to that, the clocks have been moved back. So the light of the sun dissipates a lot earlier. It's interesting that during this time, and we know the sun represents life force. So as the sun seems to decline, this time of the year in the ancient world is considered to be evil because night rules over day. And but it's interesting that during this time that is quote unquote becoming more evil, this is where the seeds of the future, the seeds of what will be, what will take deep root and what will stand strong. This is one of the times where it's amazingly fruitful to plant these seeds. And I think we can learn something from that, that agricultural phenomenon, we can learn how to apply that in our lives. Scorpio season is a great time to be planting the seeds for when the sun becomes or starts its victory lap. And one of the key phases of that victory lap is when it crosses the vernal equinox, what we call spring. The sun is fighting back, and it's fighting to get to its most triumphant position, which is the summer solstice. Okay. So as the sun is getting weaker and weaker, this is where we plant the seeds in anticipation and preparation for when it returns to glory. So it's very interesting. I said I wanted to talk about something else about that, but I think I covered everything I wanted to about that. That just something simple, just to trigger the creative aspect of the mind and how we look at these astrological signs and how to work with them. Again, we know that the new moon is when we plant and seed intention. So, what intentions are you setting forth for the world to come? And in another video, I'll come back and talk about the dynamic times that are up ahead, because we have something of great significance, and which is a rare occurrence that happens in the beginning of 2024. We're going to have aspects that have not been formed since 245 since 1779. They have not been formed in the past 245 years. And so that's not something to sneeze at. And it'll be several aspects. Okay. So given that, which we're going through a dynamic phase of change, how would you imagine your reality to be? Do you have the power to imagine and visualize what your reality will be? Or are you hamstrung and held hostage by the environment you're in, the externality of existence, the overarching governing structure? Does that determine completely your future? Some things to think about as we conclude this year. Now, from the Christian standpoint, the biblical narrative, it is when the main character of the New Testament, the Christ figure, has the Last Supper. When you look at the picture of the Last Supper and how several people have talked about the groupings, they're grouped in threes, and those threes represent the quadruplicities. And then we have Judas in the picture, who represents Scorpio, the betrayer, the kiss of death. The Scorpio gives the kiss of death. And so here we have this season, which coincides with the biblical narrative of the Christ figure being betrayed by Judas. And this leads to the crucifixion, which means to cross over, the crossing over. And the thing about the story is that the Christ figure will, after being crucified, will go and be put into a tomb, as the story goes. And then miraculously, the disciples come and discover that the tomb is empty, and that the main character has arisen. There has been some transfiguration, transformation, and resurrection. which is the crux of the religion of the Christian faith, is based on resurrection. That the main character died for the sin, which means moon, um, of man, and then resurrected in all of his glory and full glory and power. But if we take this story symbolically and astrologically, then we see that Scorpio is the sign that takes the initial seed, ego seed, and what was in the seed has fully been extracted. The husk has been broken, and this seed has become a piece of fruit. And now Scorpio does the job of rotting the fruit so that the seed can then reemerge. But this seed is a transformed seed because this seed has gone through an initial phase of cultivation. And now this seed is becoming something greater than what it began. But it must go through the gates of Scorpio to get there. It must die. Christ must die for there to be a resurrection and regeneration. So that's something else to think about at this time, that we're in a yearly phase of this, of resurrection, and this whole, the earth is dying. The earth is dying to regenerate itself. But how does this play out for us individually? What are we looking at in our individual birth charts that gives us indication of, as the sun moves through Scorpio, which means it is illuminating that which needs to be removed. Scorpio is also the eliminatory functions. So as the sun moves through here, it highlights things that need to be removed. And we know that as we eliminate, it maintains our ability to function at a healthy level. We have to be able to eliminate to have and maintain vitality. So these are themes that are up for discussion and consideration right now during Scorpio season. Now, this these aspects that are forming around the new moon are considerable. They're big energies. On the 12th, let me make sure I got it right. On the 12th, matter of fact, we'll do this. We'll share the screen. Okay. Now I currently have, this is set for Central Standard Time. Okay. Let's move these things out the way so I can see. I'll do this. I'll back it up one day. So here's the 12th. And so we see, here on the 12th. Let me get my tools going. We see here on the 12th, before the new moon, we have a big opposition here between Mars and Uranus. At the same time, we have a conjunction between the sun and Mars. So first, let's look at this conjunction. The sun is our source of vitality. It is how we express ourselves. It's our willpower. Mars is assertion. It is initiation. It is leadership. It is sun is leadership as well, but it is Mars is the spark. It's the god of war. Um, so it's ego, the emergence of an ego, a seed. So when you've got the sun and Mars together, this can be great expression of willpower. It can be a lot of machismo. It can be an over exaggerated ego um, during this phase. It can be great determination. Um, Now, Mars is the classical ruler or of Scorpio. So Mars is associated with weapons. Um, and Aries is more fighting for the hell of it, and it's just almost um, weaponry used maybe a little more recklessly. But in Scorpio, Mars is more meticulous because Scorpio is not just a sword, whereas Aries would be more of a sword or a bullet, but Scorpio would be more of the surgical scalpel. So it's more determined and measured and careful, um, but still very potent. So we have this strong determination. The one thing about Mars and Scorpio, though, that can be concerning is um, determination becoming obsession. This is an energy of overtaking, overpowering, and operating when it's at its lowest, operating from the root chakra, um, the the um, the raw, unevolved aspect of ourselves. And there's nothing wrong or bad about the root chakra, but it can be very problematic if it is expressed in an unevolved and childlike way. Um, so these are things to be mindful of around this time, the 12th and the 13th. Now, when you take those two and then you add the opposition to Uranus, which is sporadic, it is rebellious, it is freedom seeking, it can also be very mechanistic. So, Uranus is technology. It's the X-Files type of science. And so this can be unexpected things showing up. I also think that Uranus can give us sometimes effects like a Mercury retrograde, especially when it's getting a hard aspect. Computer things have been kind of funny here lately. Also pay attention to one way to always get a pulse of astrological aspects is to look at your local highways and byways, how people are driving. I've had people run red lights, running stop signs, and I've had to suddenly make a quick decision. So you getting the negative and positive of the Mars Uranus aspect perfecting and or moving closer. And that is the negative is sporadic, aggressive movements and activity and behavior. The positive is the ability to respond quickly because my one of my cousins used to be a police officer, and what do they call that? The type of driving that they teach them, not defensive driving, but I can't think of the term that he uses. Jamal, it's evasive maneuvers. That's what you're thinking of. Evasive maneuvers. But basically where they're taught how to drive in emergency and the situations where they got to make quick decisions. You know, they may have to back up quickly and back up straight, back up through cones and zigzags or driving forward. Um, so Mars and Uranus an aspect can also bring that out of us, the ability to act quickly when we have to deal with the tension, which is the aspect they're in. They're in a tense aspect, opposition, the ability to quickly respond in tense situations. But I think the main thing to keep in mind over these 2 days, especially the 12th and the 13th, um, and it comes down to one word: patience. Patience. So let me tell you, I have Uranus in Scorpio in my natal chart. So I've been getting a double dose. I've already been feeling Mars has already made a conjunction with my natal Uranus in Scorpio. So I've experienced the what would be the equivalent of a new moon where they're in conjunction. And now from a transiting perspective, I'll also pick up the opposition, which would be the equivalent to a full moon. I can say honestly that I have felt my patience being tested, especially just driving, um, uh, dealing with people asking questions that I think maybe they shouldn't be asking, and I got to be more patient and catch myself. Thankfully, I have not been completely overtaken. And I think that's the thing to keep in mind. These the what we learned when we first started studying astrology, the stars impel, they don't compel. So we are imbued by and with these archetypal energies. Whether one denies it, acknowledges it, it doesn't matter. There's endless piles of data to show how humans are impacted by the movement of the heavenly bodies. Okay. Um, but I think the thing is not being compelled. It's not a given that we have to be compelled, which means we're overtaken or driven or we're moved. We are affected, impelled, but we don't have to be controlled or moved, compelled. And I think that's the most important thing right now. It is if you maybe are a little snappy, then don't um, discount the power, necessity, and ability of an apology to make things right. Don't be so proud while the sun is conjunct Mars, opposing Uranus. A lot of pride. Um, don't be so proud or too proud to say, I apologize, or to display some degree of humility. Um, and that will be a test for all of us to see where we're at. Are we able to corral ourselves, catch ourselves, and not fly off the handle? Um, Meanwhile, this can be a time where we have to make quick decisions. Um, I'll stop sharing this. I mean, that's enough right there. Um, this is a time where we might have to make quick decisions and rely on knowledge we already have. There's a we might we might have to trust ourselves we might have to trust that we already know what maybe we don't know we know. And sometimes tense situations can bring out of us a strength or a knowledge or an awareness that maybe we're not even at the moment consciously aware that we possess. And so maybe this aspect may bring out something um, relative to that in us. The new moon culminates in May with the full moon. So we have the new moon in Scorpio, and we'll be looking for one to see the results of these root vegetables we've planted, these radishes and potatoes and other root vegetables we've planted in our lives. We can be looking towards May with the full moon in Taurus to kind of get an indication of the quality of what we seeded. Another final thing to keep in mind is that Taurus is the body, Taurus is the senses. Um, we want to especially be careful with how we're moving, safety, driving safely, um, exercising safely. And that's a big one for me because I have Saturn opposing my sun in my natal chart. So I am, although I'm pretty flexible, my tendons and musculature are prone to being tight and having tears. And I've torn so many things that it has taught me to be careful about warming up. Um, I have to be careful about what mindset I'm in because we know now that how our thoughts can cause more tension in our body, which can then cause imbalances, which can lead to tearing or dislocating or tweaking something. Um, with whenever Uranus is in the mix, there's always opportunity for something to suddenly happen. And um, Mars being the engine of ego in conjunction with the sun. Um, and I'm using the exercise as a metaphor for life in general, that we may feel very strong today. I'm going to go and grab these 130-pound dumbbells. I'm feeling strong today. But is my body ready to take on that load? Have I warmed up properly? And more importantly, is it necessary? Is it necessary for me to go and grab the 130-pound dumbbells today? Or is it just some machismo that is taking over and putting me in potentially in harm's way? If we apply this to our lives as this is just good in general, you know, um, to always be trying to keep that ego in check, not to get rid of it, but just to put it in its proper place. Because all parts of us, um, they all have a place and they all have significance. They just need to be kept in their proper place. So, um, some things to think about with the upcoming um, new moon and opposition between Mars and Uranus. Who knows how this may play out on the world stage? That could suddenly be some type of new military action or new military um, breaking news. But I'm more concerned about how I'm functioning in my world and what I can control. And that's where my head is at. Um, and so I want to make sure I'm in control of Jamal. I don't let anybody else control me. or any situation control me. And if I do that, I think I'm pretty good. Any private consultation needs you have, I invite you to visit my website, 720astrology.com. I'm now accepting appointments for the 2024 forecast reading. A lot of big things coming up in 2024, monumental things. 245 years we haven't seen some of these things happen. So I look forward to working with you. Email is info@720astrology.com. Take care. And as always, know the stars to know yourself. Peace.